Welcome to the January 2025 program meeting for the Licking County Computer Society. I am your Vice President and Program Chair, Adam Drake, here to present on the power of home servers. I have this presentation I created with the help of my assistant, Google Gemini. Before I get started, I did want to let everyone know that I'm definitely open to interruptions for questions. If I use any terms that I don't explain and you have questions, please interrupt. All right, so easy question. What is a home server? A home server is like a central hub for your digital life. Think of it as a dedicated computer within your home network. It stores and shares your files, streams media, and backs up your data. Imagine a single place for all your photos, videos, music, documents, and more. So what are some of the benefits of a home server? Centralized storage. Like I said in the last slide, you can store all your photos, videos, documents, etc. It's an easy place to back up your other computers. It also provides you with a media server, a place where you can stream movies, music, photos, games to any device in your home or even outside your home. File sharing allows you to share files easily within your home network, and then there's also multiple ways to share files outside your home network. And then remote access. You can access your server from anywhere with an internet connection if you configure it properly. So what are some of the common home server uses? I already mentioned a couple times: file storage and sharing, media streaming, backup and disaster recovery. I don't know how many disasters you're going to recover from with your home server unless you have your home server backed up to someone else's home server. Remote access, as I mentioned. And then a couple other things that weren't mentioned previously for other uses are you can host your own website. You can do all the video recording and monitoring for a home security system. And you can even have your home server act as a VPN server if you're away from home and you want to have basically an exit node to the internet. So if you're out traveling and you want to make your, I don't know, cable TV provider think that you're at home watching TV on your own network, you can VPN into your home server for that, as an example. So what are some of the types of home servers that you may have heard of or that you can have at home? A NAS, or network attached storage, is a specialized device designed for storage and sharing files. NAS devices are typically easy to set up and use, and they offer a variety of features such as RAID, which stands for Redundant Array of Independent Disk, or some people call it Redundant Array of Inexpensive Disk. And then remote access, like we said, with the NAS. A lot of modern NAS devices that you can purchase online are basically server in a box, and they come with one-click application installs and so forth. Another option would be a do-it-yourself server, which is any computer that you can build from scratch or repurpose from another use. A lot of people will take their old primary computer and make it their server when they get a new computer. DIY servers can be more powerful and customizable than NAS devices, a lot more affordable too. And they can be more challenging to set up and maintain because the off-the-shelf NAS devices are more like an appliance. And when you do your DIY server, you're doing everything yourself, including maintaining the environment. Third type of home server you could consider would be a cloud-based solution. That would basically be a server online that you access remotely, similar to how you could access your home server from outside your home. This is having your personal server outside your home, so you're always accessing it remotely. They're good for people that want all the benefits of a home server but don't want to deal with the hardware, essentially. All right, so as we know, just like any computer, a home server has to have an operating system. What are some of the popular operating systems? Ubuntu Server is a free and open source operating system based on Linux. It's a popular choice for home servers because it's stable, reliable, relatively easy to use. Windows Server, not as popular for home servers as it used to be. I think most home servers are probably Linux these days. But if you're comfortable with Windows, Windows Server is an option. Or you can just use regular Windows desktop as your operating system on a home server. You could use regular Ubuntu non-server edition as a home server too. So one very popular free, I would say I'll call it freemium because you can pay for support and so forth, but TrueNAS Core is a free and open source operating system based on FreeBSD, which is the Berkeley software distribution of Unix. TrueNAS Core is a good choice for NAS devices and other storage intensive home servers. And then I made sure I put this one on the list because this is the operating system I use. It's called Unraid. It's a commercial operating system designed specifically for home servers. It's actually based on Slackware Linux. It's a good choice for home servers that need to be used for a variety of purposes, such as media streaming, file sharing, virtualization, etc. So what are some of the common types of software that you might see on a home server? For file sharing, a lot of people use Nextcloud, which is kind of like having your own cloud on your home server, and you can set up remote access. Same thing with OwnCloud and Cfile. Nextcloud is probably the most popular one for that cloud storage type environment. So it's kind of like your Google Drive or your Apple iCloud, except it's all running on your home server. Media streaming, these are the top three contenders: Plex, Jellyfin, and Emby. I personally use Plex. It's a commercial offering. It has you can pay for your license monthly. I went with a lifetime license. It wasn't a whole lot of money, but it allows you to basically have as many streams outside your home as you want. And then I'll get into some details on Plex later on in the presentation. Some popular backup and disaster recovery tools are Duplicati, Resilio, and Borg Backup. And then some other uses that people have are Home Assistant, which is an open source home automation tool that runs on your local server. Pi-hole, which is originally meant to run on a Raspberry Pi, but can run in a virtual machine on pretty much any server. It's a place where your DNS traffic goes for ads, goes to this, what they call Pi-hole, and never returns the IP address for an advertisement's DNS entry so that you don't see the advertisements. That's a very simplistic way of describing that. And then, like I mentioned before, you can have a VPN server on your home machine.
Excuse Mary Francis.
Yes.
Can you name one paid member of LCCS that uses a home server?
That'd be me.
Yeah. I am so uninformed that my mind is already swimming a little. Now okay. I'll shut up.
No, that's okay. I mean, I'm trying to put it in words that are easy to digest. But like I said, if you have specific questions, let me know. If you hear anything that you want to look up later, jot it down. Okay. And this is being recorded too, so you'll get a link to rewatch on YouTube as many times as you want. All right, so these are some very high level simplified instructions on how you would go about setting up your home server. So the first thing you would want to do is choose your server type. Do you want to purchase a pre-built server? Do you want to build your own server? Or maybe you want to buy a NAS device. Some people that I've seen online will actually buy commercial servers like you'd see in a data center and run them out of their home. That seems like overkill for my use case, so it's not something I've really ever considered. When you're building a server, you have to decide on a motherboard, central processing unit, which is your CPU, your RAM, your storage, network card, basically all the hardware you need for any PC. A lot of times it'll be what you already have laying around or whatever you have access to or what's affordable. Next step, you install and configure the server software, including the operating system and any services you want to run on your server. And then fourth step, connect it to your network. And then fifth step would be test and optimize. Like I said, those are very high level instructions. The good thing about home servers is that anything you want to do on a home server, you can find videos for it online. That's how I set mine up. I went out to YouTube and searched. If I didn't know how to do something, I searched on YouTube and found step-by-step directions for basically everything on my server. So home server security and maintenance. Here's some recommendations. Just like any computing environment, you want to use strong passwords. You want to keep your software updated for your server. It's more important for your server maybe than even your personal use computer, because your server is typically going to be up and running all the time. So if you have software that's out of date on security patches, it could be vulnerable to people trying to hack into your server. Obviously, perform backups. Even your server, if you're backing up your server for your other computers, you probably want to back up your server too. It's recommended to back up off-site. Monitoring, you want to monitor your server's performance and health to identify and address potential problems. Physical security, don't leave your server on your back porch where somebody walking through your backyard can grab it and run away. You want to keep it in a secure place, just like all your other valuable possessions. Firewall, you want to use a firewall to protect your server from unauthorized access. A lot of the times, your router that you have hooked up to your modem for your home internet is going to have a firewall built in. So unless you specifically open ports in that firewall to allow access to your server from the internet, you're usually going to be pretty safe. User accounts, you want to create separate user accounts for each person who needs access to your server, and then a separate administrator account. And then regular maintenance, perform regular maintenance tasks such as cleaning your server's hardware and checking for disk errors. So what I do on my home server every morning before I log into my work laptop and start work for the day, I log into my home server, check for updates and errors, and make sure the backups are running successfully. These are some home server troubleshooting tips. You can tell from Google Gemini's image creation that it can't even spell server correctly, so might want to take this with a grain of salt, I guess. But if your home server is having issues, make sure it's powered up and connected to the internet network. And these troubleshooting steps are going to be just like troubleshooting steps for any computer, really. Check the network, restart the server, check your software, make sure it's up to date. If you get really desperate, you can look up the paperwork and read the manual for whatever you're having problems with. Ask for help. Basically, for every technology item that someone wants to run on their home server, there's a forum out there where you can ask for help. All you have to do is search for it. And then keep a log of your server's activity. If you're having issues with your server and you know which application you think is giving you problems, you can look in the logs for that application. I've done that many times for my home server. So, introduction to my home server, a little bit about it. I call it Computron. My son picked that name. It's a funny computer name from the Office television series. My hardware on this one, the case is called a Fractal Design Define R5, which is basically a desktop computer case that holds a lot of hard drives. The motherboard I have is an Asus motherboard B550. CPU is a few years old now. It's AMD, because AMD is the best. It's a Ryzen 7 5700G. That G means that it has onboard graphics, so I don't need a separate graphics card. That onboard graphics card I don't use to hook a monitor up to the server, but I use it for transcoding videos so that when I'm streaming videos to devices over the network, it can do the transcoding on the server and send a lower quality version of the video or a version of the video that's compatible with the device without the device having to do any type of compression or anything on the receiving end. The memory on my server, I've got 32 gigabytes of DDR4. The storage, the operating system I run, Unraid, it runs off of a USB flash drive that plugs into the back of the computer. I have it on a 64 gigabyte flash drive, just like SanDisk or whatever, but it can run on as small as 8 gigabytes. I do have 1 terabyte of NVMe solid state storage that I use for what they call cache in Unraid. And then I've got 73 terabytes of hard disk drives in the server currently. And then the operating system, actually, since I created this deck, I upgraded to Unraid 7. I'm going to show you guys a lot of screenshots of what the Unraid operating system environment looks like. And version 7 doesn't look much different than what I have here. So one thing I did when I went through and took all these screen snaps was I tried to cover up some of the sensitive information like my IP addresses and so forth. Give me a holler if you see anything that I missed. But when you log into the Unraid server, you access it via web browser by going to the computer name or IP address of your server from anywhere on your local network. So once you get logged in, the first thing you see is this main tab. And the main tab shows you all of your devices. So, and I don't want to go into too much detail because it would take a long time to explain exactly how Unraid works on all of these things. But the array I have at the top is my backup array. So the top drive is the parity drive. The first drive is a data drive, and the second drive is the data drive. So I really have 24 terabytes of backup space, the 16 plus 8. The parity drive has to be as big as the largest drive, as the largest data drive. And the parity is basically some maths to do a checksum of all your data drives. So if your array had 20 drives in it, you could still get by with one parity drive, but the number of parity drives you have is equal to the number of data drives you can lose and not lose any data. I don't want to get too detailed into the parity or the way that but that's why they call it Unraid, because it doesn't use RAID, it uses its own array system. And you can have up to 2 parity drives. The bottom part of the screen here is where I have most of my media stored. And this is a ButterFS array of smaller drives. It looks like 33 terabytes is the size, but if you look over here, I'm using 18 and there's 7 free. So that only actually adds up to 25. Because the way ButterFS is, I have some redundancy in here. I can lose up to 2 drives without losing any data. So that means that the actual size of data that I can store is going to be less than 33 terabytes in that pool. If you scroll down the main tab, the next section I have are my 2 NVMe drives. They're 500 gigs apiece, and they're also in a ButterFS format, and they're in what's a RAID 1 configuration where they're duplicates of each other in case one fails. And these are used to store the operating system configuration, basically anything that needs to run on faster storage than the spinning drives up above. And the cache also holds my document backups and so forth. Really, the only thing on the spinning drives would be TV shows and movies that I stream. And then, as I mentioned, this boot device right here is how the operating system runs off of the 64 gigabyte flash drives sticking out of the back of my computer. That might be all I have on the main tab. Oh, no, it's not. All right, so the very bottom of the main tab are the command buttons that you can use to stop the array. You can run a check to do a parity check to make sure the array's good and write corrections as needed. You can spin up and spin down all the drives. One of the benefits to the Unraid operating system is that it only spins up drives when they're in use. So if you had a lot of drives in a large array, but you're only accessing files off one drive at a time, then you save a lot of energy that way. And then there's also buttons that allow you to reboot and shut down your server. Looking over here, I don't know why it's not the main tab. For some reason, when you log into Unread, it always goes to the main tab, but the dashboard tab is on the far left. It shows you information about your system. When I took the screenshot, it had been up and running for 3 days since the last restart. It shows the information about the motherboard, BIOS, version, your processor information, including the temperature and everything. Docker containers. If you want to know more about Docker containers, you can look at one of our previous program meetings. We did a presentation on virtualization, and I talked about Docker containers, but they're essentially very small virtual machines that share the Linux kernel with the host. So it's basically a way to save resources and still have multiple virtual environments running on your server. You can see right here, I don't have any virtual machines running. All I have is Docker containers. I blanked out the 5 of them here. You can ask me about those some other time, but the 2 that I have on here are Deluge, which is a BitTorrent client, and then Plex, which is what I use for streaming videos. And then down here, you can see share information, but that's also going to be on the share tab. So I'll wait and talk about that. Scrolling down a little bit, you can see all the individual cores and threads for the processor. You can tell it's not being used much right at this point in time. You can see user information. The only users I have are the admin account known as root, and then a Drake account that I use for basically creating file shares for Windows. And then down here, you can see how much of the memory is currently being used. You can see Tailscale configuration, which is a VPN tool for connecting to your server and other devices on the go. And then if you continue scrolling down, you can see your Ethernet connection information. And then the last thing on here that you can see is the GPU specs. So if I was using my GPU to transcode video, you'd be able to see some of these bars jump up where it's in use. Right now, it's pretty much 0% when I took the screenshot. And then scrolling down further on the dashboard, you can see some statistics on your different hard drives, the temperatures, the smart status, if they're healthy or not. All right, so the third tab on Unraid is the shares, and shares are basically folders that you create on your file system to hold certain types of data that you can share, which is why they're called shares, right? So the first one here is called app data, and that's the application data for the Docker containers I have running. And you can see over here under storage that it's stored on the cache, which the cache is the 2 NVMe drives. So the data for the Docker containers, it's basically their operating system and then all the files they use to be up and running. Those are all stored on the faster storage. Same with the app data backup, which is a place where I back up the app data every night. Then I have my backup array, which is just what it sounds like, backups of all of these other shares get backed up to the backup on the backup array. That's the only thing I have on the Unraid array at this moment. Also stored in cache are my documents. Domains, I don't use that share. It's for virtual machines. Like I said, I'm not running any virtual machines. And then downloads and media I have running on the VTRFS array, which is the biggest, I'm sorry, not array, but cache pool, I guess they're calling it. It's the largest storage I have on here. That's all my movies and TV shows and downloads and ISOs. Looks like I'm actually storing the ISOs on the cache currently, which is the faster storage. And then my pictures and system data are all stored on the faster cache storage. The settings tab for Unraid, as you can see, there's a lot of different options. This is pretty much like your control panel on Windows or any Linux distribution where you can go in and manage your server just like you would any computer, basically. And this is what it looks like on Unraid. A lot of the other home server options have web interfaces with similar settings that you can adjust. Well, there was the second page of settings. And then the plugins tab is a place where I have what are called plugins. They're not Docker containers, but they're applications that run on Unraid, and you can download them from the apps tab. And each of these plugins on Unraid has its own purpose. The app data backup is what I use to back up my app data for my Docker containers every night. The cleanup app data is what it sounds like. It cleans up data that you no longer need. Think of it like disk cleanup on Windows, basically. Community applications is a plugin that allows you to have this apps tab where you can download. There's thousands of applications you can download. Some of them are Docker containers, some of them are plugins, basically. Some other apps I have on here, system statistics is what gives you the stats tab over here, lets you see information about how your system's running. You can see the temperature down here. You can see the CPU temperature and the motherboard temperature. Those are thanks to this system temperature plugin I have here. Fix Common Problems is a troubleshooting tool. It basically scans your system and lets you know if you have any issues. It runs every day and gives you a warning. You can also set it up to email you if you have problems. GPU Statistics is a plugin that I use on the dashboard to see all the information about the GPU. And then Radeon Top, because I have an AMD processor with built-in Radeon graphics, that allows you to use the Radeon Top command line in a terminal to see how busy it is. rclone is a popular backup tool that I use from my server to back up my files to Google Drive. This is drivers for, I can't remember which device this is for. It's probably for my network. Realtek makes a lot of devices, but I have these drivers. I don't remember why. Sorry. Tailscale, like I said, is a VPN service that makes devices and applications you own accessible anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
It's very handy. I recommend looking into it if you haven't already.
Plug it in.
Some of these are not going to be worth describing. But the last one on here is called User Scripts, and that's a plugin that lets you create and manage scripts and then also schedule them to run on a timely basis. So this is a screenshot of that user scripts that I have. And I have scripts that run every evening. So at 1 a.m. I'm taking a backup from my laptop. At 2 a.m. I'm running a backup to the local backup array on the same machine. And then 3 a.m. I'm backing up to Google Drive. And there's some other scripts here that I don't currently have scheduled. Looking at an example of one of the scripts, this is one I have that runs the backups for my laptop. And when I'm running my laptop on Linux like it is now, I have several rsync commands, which is a Linux command that it's kind of like robocopy on Windows, but it allows you to back up specific directories from the remote device to the server. Looking at the apps tab here, this is where you can search for all the various apps that you can install on Unraid. I have quite a few on the plugins tab and on the Dockers tab that I'm currently running. Here's the statistics tab where it kind of shows you the status of your disk usage, how full they're getting. Mine are getting pretty full on the spinning drives. And then if you scroll down, you can see historical information about your processor load, how much RAM you have available, network load, IO for your disk. And then the last tab here is the tools tab. It's kind of like the settings tab, except I don't know why they're separate, to tell you the truth, but the tools tab is basically macros for making system changes that aren't on the settings tab already. So that was my Unraid operating system. Now I'm showing you guys my Plex server environment. So I have a lot of family and friends that connect to my server using Plex for their Android, iOS, Roku, Windows, you name it. And Plex has a client that supports it. But they can connect to my server from their home and watch some of these videos that I have available. And then Plex also has a dashboard where I can see if someone's watching an episode of a show. I can see what they're watching. I can see if they're transcoding the video or if they're watching it in the native format. I can see what language. I can see if they're using closed captioning. And then I can also monitor the server performance from the Plex application itself. And I think that's my last slide. I feel like I was droning on and on there for quite a bit. Does anyone have any home server questions they'd like to bring up now?
What are you using for the your power backup?
What am I using for a power backup? Just a regular power strip. If the power goes out, it goes out. I mean, it's mostly backups of my files. All my important files I already have backed up to Google Drive, and all the TV shows and stuff like that. If it goes down, people can wait till the power comes back online, or I could my DVDs and Blu-ray disc and everything, I could always re-rip those if I needed to. It would take a long time. Any other questions for the group? From the group? Comments?
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
If you have a Flex server to like share your pictures, music, whatever, with the rest of your family members that may be in another state,
Yeah.
do they have to purchase how do they get on? Do they have to have their own Flex server, or how do they get onto mine?
No, that's a good question. So if you have a Plex server running at your home, you can, so there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can share your Plex server with other people who have Plex login accounts, which they don't have to have their own Plex server. The way I do it, I have a shared login that I send to all of my users, and then they have their own individual profiles where they click on their picture when they log in. But I mean, you can have the app on your phone or whatever and watch movies from your Plex server. But I mean, somebody has to have a Plex server somewhere, but it's pretty handy. It works very much like Netflix or Amazon Prime or any of the other video streaming services.
So they work off of an app, basically.
Yep, exactly. It's
Yeah,
supported
thank
on,
you.
Yep, no problem. Supported on Roku and smart TVs and everything.
Yeah, Adam, why do I need one?
Why do you need what?
A server.
Well, if you didn't see any reason on my list of useful reasons for having a server, then you must not need one.
I don't think I need one.
You probably don't need one. I could probably live without one, but it's too much fun to not have one for me. Does anyone else on here have a home server?
I ran one long time ago when I was first starting doing these videos. It was a Ubuntu
Yeah.
10.04 or whatever, and it was a server. No, I think I just installed Apache
hmm
2 on just a new Ubuntu operating system.
Just to have an HTML server.
Yeah, right. And then I downloaded there was another one that was a file server that I attached to that. So we could share files and stuff.
Yeah, there's hundreds of options for file servers,
Yeah,
as you're probably
yeah.
aware. Yeah. It can be fun. It can be time consuming. It can be annoying when people ping me to tell me they can't view something on Plex that they're wanting to see at that point in time. But overall, for me, it's worthwhile and it's fun. I have mine tuned in pretty well where, like I said, I log into it every morning, take a look around, make sure everything's up and running. I really don't sink a lot of time into it unless something breaks and I have to do some troubleshooting, which is very rare these days.
Mary Frances had a tiny safety question.
Yes.
While you were going through that long list of things, I saw something about the temperature and something about 98 degrees. Is this device possibly going to overheat at some point and I not know about it?
I mean, that's a possibility. If the fan on the CPU fails, it could overheat. I've got fan on the CPU, and I've got two intake fans on the front of the computer, one intake fan on the side of the computer, a fan on the back blowing air out, and a fan on top blowing air out. But the fans spin up and down as needed for the temperature changes. But I mean, if it overheats, I'd know pretty quick that I have the server sitting in an old wood desk in my office where I spend most of my days working from home.
By the way, do you have to have a domain name in
I
order for
don't.
people to get into this?
Mm-mm. With the way Plex works, when they log into Plex, it knows where your server is because your server connects to Plex in the cloud.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one handy thing about Plex that a lot of the other media streaming servers don't have as an
Mhm.
option. Yep, no domain name. Any other questions, comments? Rare insults?
I'd say, to Virgil, like in Mary Frances, a lot of this is for use of sharing files that you have with somebody else not close to you. Or if you have multiple computers in the same household that need to access, rather than have to have copies on every device, you can have copies on the server, and then you access everything, from there. So there's two. I would say there's two levels of home servers. One for multiple people, multiple devices accessing common files, and then the next level is for sharing files outside of your home.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. We've had Ray Baxter doing workshops for us, and he does the same thing Adam does. He has a huge audio library, and I think he has some videos so that his family members from around the country can, I want to listen to such and such record, they can just go in and connect to his server. He's got a Plex, I'm pretty sure, and watch videos or listen to music, and they don't have to have it on theirs.
Yeah, I've actually got a music video channel that I have on my Plex server now too, where you can watch music videos from the 70s, 80s, 90s. It's pretty fun sometimes.
Well, I know a question that somebody might have is, you said you've got these videos on your server. How did you get the videos on the server?
Well, there's different ways to get the videos. I will say that all of my videos were purchased on Blu-ray or DVD and then converted to files on my server, but some people find ways to go online and download them. Which is outside the scope of this presentation.
Right.
Well, actually, Windows already has a very simple thing called file sharing, using your local area network to, I do use it all the time. I transfer files from one machine to another, just using the Windows.
I've used that a lot in the past. Yeah. Windows actually has a built-in DLNA server, which can be used for streaming movie and TV and video files to your smart TV. right from Windows.
Oh,
That's something I used to use in years past. It was pretty handy too. All right, anything else anyone wants to add or ask about, or any other feedback? All right, Everett, I think we can stop recording probably. Thanks everyone for being here.
Thank you.